I'm Cody DePablo.
And I'm Michael Weatherly.
And today we're talking Season 3, Episode 15, Head Case.
Head case.
Welcome to Off Duty, an NCIS rewatch podcast. This week on the show, we're talking Season 3, Episode 15, Head Case. While busting 3 Navy enlisted men running an automotive chop shop, Gibbs, Tony, and Ziva find a severed head in a cooler in the trunk of one of the cars. The gang find the rest of the body, the story, the answers, and the bad actors. At today's time of this episode's release on February 7th, 2006, Japanese Princess Kiko is pregnant with her 3rd child. The Pink Panther starring Steve Martin has its theatrical release. Egypt announces the discovery of an intact pharaonic tomb in the Valley of the Kings, the first discovered since King Tutankhamun in 1922. Now, did I get any of those? Did I butcher any of those?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, because would you mind giving me notes so that I can go back and actually do it the way you would do it, which is perfect.
I think you could just call him King Tut.
King Tut? Well, but it's Tutankhamun.
When you say that, nobody knows what the heck you're talking about.
Okay, fine, but okay,
that's like when you say it's in Bogota, Colombia.
Bogota, Colombia, but it's the reality. I mean, I'm going to have to Americanize it for you.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Who was in the first Pink Panther movie that was a guest star on NCIS?
Oh.
Multiple guest stars.
Who?
Robert Wagner.
You are so right.
Yeah, everyone should go and watch that right now. Leave this podcast, go watch that, and then come back. This will still be here.
So while arresting a group of Navy sailors who were operating an illegal automotive chop shop, Ziva finds a severed head in a trunk of a recently stolen car. Abby matches the head to a Navy captain who died 4 months prior, sending the team on a hunt for a possible human chop shop and the captain's remaining body parts. What do you remember from shooting this episode?
I remember the guest stars were great.
Do you remember that moment? And it's a really good moment. We are discovering this head, right, in the back of the trunk. And you come right behind me and I'm staring at it. And you say, oh, yeah, it's always hard when it's your first, when you find this kind of thing, body part. It's always hard the first time. She goes, it's especially hard when you know the person.
Mine was a motorcycle accident in Baltimore. I thought I was just picking.
Trust me, it's far worse when you know the person.
Do you remember that? Why do you laugh?
Like Dinozo is like, oh yeah, I know it must be hard when you're, when you see something like this for the first time. And Ziva says, yes, especially when you know the person. but this is the thing in my mind. Then I hear you like turning and going, just kidding. Like, just kidding. In my mind, the joke, you don't know why things amuse you the way they do, but I can just, that's the kind of thing that would have pissed off the crew because I would have been laughing for 5 minutes.
By the way, and this is the thing that you and I did a lot of, like you'd start laughing and I'd be like, this is so inappropriate. Why are you laughing? And then your laughter.
Because it's so wildly inappropriate.
Would then make me laugh and then we wouldn't. Do you remember there was one time you and I were like in between scenes and it was so good. And
oh God,
we were laughing about something and we couldn't stop laughing and you were having orange juice and then one was the orange juice. Started coming out of your nose.
It came out of my nose.
And then I started laughing at the fact that it started coming out of your nose, and then we both couldn't stop laughing, and then they had to take like a 10-minute break.
Oh God, it's so much when that happens to me. What do you think a year of NCIS thinks, how many Palmers do you think they give this episode?
You know what? I don't know, but I'm going to guess it's probably 7 or 8.
It only gets 6 Palmer heads.
What? I'm surprised by that.
Everyone should go check out this guy's website because there's a little thing called, man, this show is old. McGee mentions the TV show The X-Files. It's not just a dated reference now because it experienced a revival in 2016, but the original run to which McGee refers was 1993 to 2001. I want to see what he says that Ziva proposition. If the glue sticks.
You're asking me to believe a sailor jacked a car with a head in the trunk and that he didn't know it?
If the glue sticks.
Shoe fits.
If the what?
If the glue sticks.
If the glue sticks. What's the saying?
If the shoe fits.
Oh, if the shoe fits, yeah.
I'm going to introduce our next guest. I want you to guess who it is. We're going to pretend we're on SmartLess. He was on Ally McBeal, Ned and Stacey, and Grey's Anatomy. On NCIS, he played Director Jerome Craig and acted as NCIS Director during Leon Vance's leave of absence in Season 10. Who do we have coming?
Greg Germann.
You knew. Let's bring him in here.
Leon, hey, I was just, I'm so sorry. Belgian chocolates, what am I thinking? Maybe he didn't find it so ridiculous.
6 hours, Deputy Director.
That's Director. No. May I step in, Agent Gibbs? This is a political nightmare gift wrapped in red tape. Risks aren't my specialty. May I come in, Miss Shudo? We're having dinner tomorrow night. The wife is okay with it. Bitter with just the right amount of bite and just a breath of cacao. I'll just be upstairs rearranging my Zen rock garden.
The episode called Shiva, I believe, was your first episode.
My disc. Oh, Leon. Hey, I was just, I'm so sorry, Mr. Secretary.
The reason I bring that up is that script
because it was
written,
the best episode that NCIS has ever done.
It is actually considered in a fan ranking. It is considered one of the best episodes.
Really?
In part because you were there, but also
of course, yeah.
in part because Matt Craven was there. No, in part it was because Cody DePablo got a hold of the script and she came over to me and she was like, have you read it? And I was like, oh, Cody, I mean, it's the next, we're shooting this one. That's the next one. I haven't that's next week. I'm not thinking about next week. And she said, you will read it like at lunch. You will take, so I went back to my trailer. I read it at lunch and then I came over and I knocked on her door right before we were going back. And I said, okay. And she said, we are changing it. And so then we went over to Mark Harmon's trailer. Mm-hmm. Now this is season 10 of the show. Most people in season 10 don't give a fuck what they, just tell me where to stand. Yeah. And I'll read off a cue card. It's like Ron Burgundy time. It's like, fuck you, San Diego. And then, and we went over there and Cody made her, points. And then Mark, Cody and I went upstairs to the writer's room and the producers. And we sat down with the writers and we had a 45-minute meeting about that script. And Cody was as passionate as she is right now in this. But anyway,
By the
curious.
way, I always have to apologize for my passions because sometimes those passions are always misinterpreted.
No, but it's so good that you give a shit.
Yeah, that is good.
But I'm curious if you have any, I know it's through the mists of time, like 14 years ago or whatever, but did you have any initial memories of kind of coming in and floating around that set? Because that set was also kind of an interesting place.
Well, I mean, your experience of that set, like my experience of Ally is or Grey's or whatever it is different because, you're there every day and every week. And so I'm just dropping in. And often, as when you you're dropping into a show that's on it's operating on, like that one is or was, you're kind of stepping into a world that's you are stepping onto a treadmill that's going. But that, my memory at least of that, it was a lot of my stuff was with Mark and with you, and it was very, it was so friendly, I thought, and I felt like they wanted me there, which as an actor, you often feel like I'm here, I hope they like me, okay, and that's me anyway. I'm terribly insecure in that way, so I felt it was really fun to do because I felt like and it was also very. That character ended up being, for me at least, it's kind of a funny character. He's a fish out of water, really.
6 hours later.
So, you think it was intercepted?
6 hours, Deputy Director.
That's director.
I was shocked that the spinoff they talked to me about never happened. I don't know if you know anybody, but I was thinking that there was going to be a half-hour single camera called Jerome, and we were going to follow him. He continues to be put in these positions in the government where he doesn't belong.
Well, I printed up the very beginning of your IMDb television thing, and I see ABC after school specials, and you in a high school after school special called Narc.
I think it was called High School Narc.
High School Narc.
And I was the one that the
Billy.
Narc was after. I was the bad seed. And you know who else was in that? Who I saw not too long ago. I was in Venice with my son, and walking down the street, and this guy came up to me and he said, Greg, you know if you remember me, but hey man, it's Viggo. How are you? It's Viggo Mortensen who had like a small part in that. He was like this long-haired kid. He was very sweet. And I said, wait, I think I probably said, but you're Viggo Mortensen. How do I know you? We did High School Narc together.
Oh my God.
Narc. Now wait, I have to ask, because your son is so cool and having a lot of fun in the chosen occupation. But is that does that make you feel good for a moment when Viggo says, "Hey, Greg," and then your son's like,
it took him a minute to realize that Viggo was the same guy in Lord of the Rings or something, and then that was impressive. But my son Asa now, he's an actor, and he's on he's on Gen V, so he's lecturing me a lot about acting and show business.
Sure,
which is
Were
great.
you very much like? Were you very supporting about the?
No, I'm not supportive of anything. I never really I wasn't encouraging or discouraging, and I never brought him to things like premieres or whatever. And then he just got into it about 5 or 6 years ago. And my sister at one point, I said, God, I don't know if it's I don't want it. It's his. I don't want it to be. I don't want him to feel like it's his. I don't want him to feel any like he's my kid or like that. And she said, if I was resistant to it in some way, and she said, if you were a plumber and he wanted to become a plumber, you'd take him to work with you. You'd be so proud. And I thought, that's right. And so now he's like a colleague. We were just in New York, and we, went to see a bunch of plays together, and he's,
wow.
It's fantastic. It's just, we survived the teenage tunnel of darkness, and
Yes.
and I think that's Michael. When I remember you and I on the set sharing stories about things like that with kids, and
Yes.
but we're out of that, and he's in his 20s, and he's a colleague, and I learn a lot from him about the craft or a business, because he's into the craft, and it's I don't know if this makes sense, but sometimes when you hear a parent or spouse or a friend say, I'm really proud of this person, and I always have trouble with that, because I think I'm not. It's really what you're saying is, I'm proud that this person, like a spouse, has chosen me. It makes me feel good about myself that this person who's so amazing is part of my life, and that's the way I feel about my son. He's extraordinary, and so I'm kind of proud of myself that I'm part of his life, I think, is the truth.
I so recognize that feeling. So I stopped working for 2 years. Just 2 years ago, I put down my SAG card, and I needed to take a break. And I have to credit COVID, the terrible
Right.
COVID, but it was the first time in my career that I had an imposed, like, you must stop working. You cannot. You are quarantined from sets and cameras and your fellow crazy actor people. All of a sudden, I realized I had no idea how to live real life. Without a call sheet, I was fucking clueless. And so I'm scrubbing toilets, and I'm making pancakes with the kids, and I'm doing everything. And I was like, oh, I should be doing more of this. So I went back to work, and I was like, when my contract is over, I'm going to lay down my SAG card. So for the last 2 years, I've just been Mr. Mom, I've been doing my Michael Keaton impression, and I went to go do my first job very recently, and my phone was ringing in my pocket, and I was out in LA just checking into my hotel, and it was my son, and I said, "Hey, buddy, what are you doing?" And he had tears coming down. He's 10 years old. This is my youngest son. Tears, and he goes, "I miss you so much, Dad." And I was like, oh, kill me. But it was that moment, Greg, exactly of like, I've never been loved like that.
That's
like
right.
I didn't know what to do with that love. I
That's
was
right.
like, oh my God, this is awesome, but terrifying. Wait, but if I love somebody, that means I can't run away.
Yeah. I remember once, and I remember the quote because it was such a remarkable thing you said, Michael, to me once. You said, I could live without a lot of things, but I can't live without that love. He goes, I would bypass anything and I could live in a tiny little studio, but I could not live without that. And I remember thinking like, yeah, that's pretty incredible for a person that's always been so remarkably busy and that couldn't unplug. You know, you had a really tough time unplugging. And so that realization must have been one, incredible, but also, you know.
Yeah, I know. I was always, I was on that hamster wheel, that treadmill. What were you going to say, Greg, before?
Well, just that it's when that story makes me feel like you won the lottery. You know, when your kids tell you that, you know, they want to spend time with you or that they love you. And I mean, that's just like, that's all we want. We just want them to, you know, to do that, you know, just like that recent trip to New York with Asa, that he wants to hang out with me at all. I'm just so, it's the very, very best. I can't, you know, everything else can be kind of, you know, up and down, but if that's working, then I'm satisfied.
Well, you know, that's really funny that you say that because I always wanted to hang out with my parents.
Oh, really?
Wow. And now that you say that to me, I guess that they must have felt so good because I always felt like they were my friends. I always felt like, and of course, trust me, we've gone through, you know, ups and downs and relationships change and you go through really weird dynamics and challenges, certainly. But I always wanted to like, hey, let's get together or how about we plan a vacation or, you know, like for my mom's 60th, like we went to Turkey and I said, hey, let's do this. And we took like a big trip, like 3 weeks together, you know, and,
was it that way when you were a teenager? Like when did that start? Was it always your memory? Or would they say that? Would they say, no, that's not my memory?
No, it was always a memory. And I have to say, I'm lucky that I come from a family that always sort of established that bond where I had extended family too. So like, for example, my mom's one of 8 and my dad's one of 3. And I was very, very close to my grandmother. And so for me, the bonds are somehow solidified by, you know, we've taught each other how to communicate. We've taught each other to share. You earn trust, as you know, and all that stuff. But it's an ongoing thing. And it's always, and sometimes you're going to be like, no, man, it's too much. It's too much, you know, but it is a beautiful thing when you say, hey, you know, I'm so proud of that, or I can't believe he wants to spend time with that. And, you know, I have to say thank you because you just allowed me to see how my parents felt about me saying like, hey, let's hang out together because I miss you or I want to talk to you or let's laugh or, you know, let's cuddle or I still do that. I did that with my grandparents up until I was like 21.
I'm always, I have, my son will call me, you know, like once a day practically. And I try not to, I really want to, you know, let him come to me because otherwise I would just be, you know, way too overbearing, I'm sure. And maybe I am, I don't know.
I'm curious when you were, when you're on a series or you're sort of on a work train, like, when you're just kind of going gig to gig to gig and then coming back into town, auditioning for 3 things. And then all of a sudden you're like, hey, here's your ticket to Vancouver, Greg. Right. Did you ever get into a place where you wanted it to stop for a second so that you could breathe? Or did you always recognize when it stops, it will stop for me? Because I always thought I can't stop because one day they're not going to hire me. So I have to work as much as I can. And I did not take as good care of myself as I maybe might have, you know?
I'm probably like you in that and still, I mean, one, I like doing it. I mean, I feel really lucky that I didn't, you know, I reference my son constantly, but I've told him that this job, this career, the work is when you're out of work. Because the job is amazing. It's an amazing job, you know, especially when you're into the craft of it and all that. I mean, I really believe in it. I'm kind of, I really believe that even when material could be, whether it's Shakespeare or I'm on TV or whatever I'm doing, I really believe in the power of it. I'm a little corny in that way. And so the job is not the hardest part to me. The hardest part is when you're out of work. And then how do you keep yourself so that you're really healthy and really engaged and kind of primed? So I really love to work, and I want to, I wouldn't mind. I don't think I've ever gotten I've gotten exhausted for sure, but not like I want to step back and turn in my SAG card so much like that. I love it. And I also love actors. Actors are, and that was moving to me, Cody, to on the picket line to see all these. My wife is a teacher and an amazing teacher, and she's not in the business. And I've just told her, actors, most actors that I know who are good actors, it's not the stereotype. It's like that some people might think of as actors, narcissists and all that stuff. They're really generous, lots of humility.
It's so great that you remind us and the people that are certainly listening. So many artists get such a bad rap, but I really do believe that sometimes when I talk about when I talk about personally my tribe, like when I bump into my tribe, like my friends that I went to conservatory with, or my friends that I started with in New York, like just the idea of sitting down at a table and sharing a tea and being like, man, I had such a tough time with that. Or, the idea that you can dissect an emotional moment and get emotional about it and revisit that and have the great big luxury of then being able to pour it into the work and certainly share that moment. I agree with you wholeheartedly that it's that it's such a privilege,
Yeah.
and I think I for one can say that I've needed to step away because I feel like I lost a little bit of that place where my love for it had gotten somewhere in there, whether it was my own personal stuff that had not been addressed, and therefore I lost some of that. Like, where am I going? Where am I going? You know what I mean? And but it's the thing that I always loved about acting. It's the thing that I always loved about revisiting the work.
All television always comes into these kind of procedural lanes. I mean, not all television, but Cody and I are getting ready to do this. Speaking of spinoffs, we're doing a 10-episode thing for Paramount Plus, where it's just our two characters running around Europe, and we don't
Who knows?
solve a
Maybe
crime.
there's a space for Jerome.
I think Jerome, if you're running around Europe, for sure, Jerome.
And by the way, like Jerome is stuck in some sort of like political, like what?
Yeah, he needs help. He's stuck. I mean, you guys, look, if we could pause this for a second, just so I can pitch myself, really. I'm doing this for one reason and one reason only. The ticket to Vancouver is fine, but the ticket to Europe is much better.
Wait, I have a question for you, Greg. So you're a music theater guy.
Well, I've done some. You've
done more than one, and you originated a part for Stephen Sondheim.
Right, and I just was in New York just last week. I went to Cabaret, and I saw Terrence Mann, who's kind of such a legend really in musical theater, and he was in Assassins. So Terry Mann was in Assassins. Victor Garber, Lee Wilkoff, Jonathan Hadari, Deborah Monk, Annie Golden, like people who are really good. Now, that was the first musical I'd done. And it was Stephen Sondheim. And in that show, I played John Hinckley. And John Hinckley in that show sings a love song to Jodie Foster. And it's the love song of the show. It's kind of a love ballad of the show. And I start out by accompanying myself on the guitar. Now, I was terrified because I'm an actor, and I was an actor who can sing, but not like Victor Garber and those guys. I mean, those guys are really the real deal. And there was a moment where we were doing a rehearsal in a rehearsal room under fluorescent lights. There's maybe 20 people there, like designers and whatnot, and Sondheim and, Jerry Zach's the director. And it got to so it's just folding chairs, really, and we're kind of going through the show, and it got to my song, and so I start accompanying myself on the guitar and playing it, and then the song gets very emotional, And I can look back and I see the other actors are sort of standing where the folding chairs are, sort of watching me do this number, Victor and Terry and Lee and all these guys. And I could see they're looking at me. I was imagining their faces were like, wow, this is going to be Greg's last day. This is sad. Jerry Zaks at the time had sort of a reputation that somebody would get fired during rehearsals. And it's clearly was going to be me. I mean, I was the one. And I finished the song, and I mean, my knees were literally shaking. And Sondheim jumped up and gave me a hug. And he said, see, you can do it. And then about a year and a half ago or two, during COVID, we did a Zoom anniversary thing with the whole cast and Sondheim right before he died. And Annie Golden and I sang that song. It's a duet. She's Squeaky Fromm, and she sings the love song to Charles Manson. So you have John Hinckley singing to Jodie Foster and Squeaky Fromm singing to Charles Manson. Yeah, it's really worth listening to. It's really good. The song is. And so we sang it on Zoom for Steve. And he cried.
Oh.
And so things like that happen to you in your career, a moment, or you work with somebody and you feel like, okay, I'm done. If I never did anything else, if I would feel like, okay, I've accomplished something. That's so that, but I'm when you say musical theater guy, I'm not like those guys are. Those guys are the real deal. I'm an actor who can sing, but not.
Yeah, but I know plenty of music theater guys, and no one has a story like that. You know what I mean?
No,
that's a good story.
They sang for Stephen Sondheim, and then all of a sudden he got up, and just when you think you're going to be fired, he gives you a hug, and he goes, "See, you can do it."
That was extraordinary.
Epic moment.
Yeah, that was epic. Yeah, yeah.
And it is such a short ride from Billy in High School Narc to that moment.
It was a short. It
always goes back to High School Narc.
That's right. High School Narc. Well, when you start at the top, Cody, once you've done High School Narc, it's like Jodie Foster starting with Taxi Driver. I started with High School Narc. I mean, I think it's kind of similar.
Okay, wait, but this is a good area just to explore for a second. So sitcoms, dramas, dramedies, soaps, stage, there is a ghettoization that takes place. Like casting directors are like, oh no, Greg's a sitcom actor. He's not, we can't have him come in for anything serious. And you're like, no, Stephen Sondheim hugged me. I can be, I can be emotive and serious.
Right.
But you do get kind of, it's just easier for agents and everybody on the breakdown list to be like, oh no, Greg is this.
Right.
So, did you ever feel trapped by that?
No, and in fact, on Alley, when we first started doing Alley McBeal, there was might have been the first season. There was like a thing in some People magazine remember magazines? There was a magazine.
I remember those.
Yeah, there was a magazine called People Magazine, and there was a thing about. I don't know how I ended up with this, but there was a thing about actors who play roles that are like, I was kind of this, not evil, but kind of a likable, unlikable guy, a charming, but, kind of a unlikable guy. And there was different, and they had me, the only one I remember is Jack Nicholson was one of them. But I was in a group of like 5, and they had me like on TV. And one of those actors, it might have been Jack Nicholson, said, if you can get a niche, great. Like, there's nothing wrong with a niche, having a little thing that you're known for and that you do really well. I mean, any good actor can do lots of different things, but, you don't have to take, I don't have to take every job that's offered. So, I don't mind being thought of as somebody who's kind of being lazy and, not really thinking it through might think of me.
I always had a hard time trying to, like, when the audition was for, I remember auditioning for Time Cop. And Bryan Singer was doing Time Cop for ABC. And it was a series based on the Jean-Claude Van Damme classic. And what could go wrong? Time Cop. And so at that time, I was in the ABC world. I was like doing lots of stuff with ABC. And so I went to screen test. And when I walked into that, hallway down in Century City at the old ABC building, and sat down in my chair, all around me, were like for the 4 or 5 other guys that were Time Cop,
material
hopefuls. They were all wearing boots, blue jeans with the cuffs kind of kicked up a little, tight blue jeans, white T-shirts, bulgy muscles, and they were either wearing their leather jacket or the leather jacket was casually draped over one shoulder. And
What were you wearing?
I was wearing a double-breasted suit.
No, you weren't. Were you really?
I was, and a polka dot tie. A Perry
you were
Ellis.
dressed-
If you remember
dressed
Perry
really
Ellis.
hard.
Perry Ellis from the 80s. But I had this polka dot tie.
You had a
And,
take on the characters, what you're saying.
Yes. And
You
they,
had a different take.
Yeah, a different take.
so, but this is to the point of, I know I'm not that guy. I don't look
Right.
like a guy who's like got, scabbed, like his hands are all calloused
Right.
and he works at a construction site. That's no one's going to buy that.
Right.
But Cary Grant with a time machine, that's where I was going. I was
Right.
like, how about I
There you
fix
go.
this? It's Tom Hanks with a time machine.
Right.
And maybe, what the heck are we going to do? It's Chandler Bing with a time machine.
Hey, what the heck are we going to do? Yeah,
And so
good.
it's Jerry
Very good.
Seinfeld with a time machine.
Yeah.
And so, but I always, out of an insecurity, I always tried to move things towards comedy and towards making fun of myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe that's one of those, making Fish a relatable guy that, like, on the surface, or just looking at the sort of facts, you would say, that's not a nice person.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That is a difficult human being.
Right.
But the way when you embody, you see a struggle, the human struggling behind that, then, and I always felt doing DiNozzo that there was a similar thing where he's the office Lothario or a cat or whatever, he's this lounge lizard kind of guy.
What'd you find, Tony? Tony!
Huh? Zamfir. It's a master of the pan flute.
There's not a lot of redeeming qualities to him, but, and one of the things that I found with Cody when we started playing scenes is that she was like peeking around that mask and seeing other things that maybe I didn't even see at the time, but it just strengthens the layers of a performance. And then you have this new kind of superpower because you can kind of do anything when you find a character. And that is the great thing about doing series television day in, day out. Is
I
you
agree.
get to really explore that
It's
character.
the greatest gift. It's the
I
greatest
agree.
gift. I always say, especially if you get to latch onto a character that you truly want to explore for a very long time.
I think that's, I'm always suspicious of when, I write to, and when somebody, or when you're playing a role like you're saying, that you did Michael or I guess Fish, or even like Karasik on Grey's Anatomy, that are characters that like you said, on the page might look like, oh, these guys aren't nice guys or something. You'll often hear this character isn't likable, but I don't know. I mean, that's kind of part of our job. You take somebody, our job is to kind of look at some human being and, it's not compassion, or maybe it's empathy, but to understand, why they're doing the things they're doing, because at the end of the day, we're all kind of come from the same place. And
that's
so
the thing that we talked about a lot at NCIS, and I think the reason why we always ran to the writer's room, after so many years, we'd just be like, wait a minute, we never just gave up or just said like, whatever, just say your line, stand on your mark, and just do
that's
it,
why that explains the longevity of the show. Honestly, I mean, when you guys, they have actors like you guys, and that you care about what you're doing. And that the show stays on the air. I understand the notion of feeling like you have to apologize for your passion, because, you're passionate, you come on strong, and that's good because it means you're still into it. The opposite would be awful if you read it, okay, it's one of these, and we say the thing, I get the check, and I go home, and I'm going to take a vacation to Barbados. You still take the vacation to Barbados, for sure, and you put the craft services in your purse, but still, you care about it.
I remember when Charles Durning came to do a guest spot in season 2.
All right. Come with me, Mr. Yost. Water cooler's right over here.
Not a water cooler. It's called a scuttlebutt.
I had some great scenes with Charlie. Oh, my God. And Sasha Alexander had this little dance that she did with him in the squad room.
It brings back a night of tropical splendor. can bring back a memory.
We had 100 people coming from the production office and everywhere just to watch behind camera. There was like an audience of 100 people from all over. But Durning went by on his way home. We did this scene. He was tears and great. And on his way home, he goes by the craft service table and he's taken all the Fritos.
I love that.
Jam. And he goes,
you could never have enough bags of Fritos. You can never, those little bags, those are priceless.
The little bags, they're perfect. And I mean, my other Durning story is the very first day he was wearing a green T-shirt that said, "Fight me, I'm Irish." And we were in the elevator and I had to take him off the elevator because I had gone down to get him from the front area, and that was our thing. So we got into the elevator for the first rehearsal, and he goes, "You know any Edgar Allan Poe?" And I was like, "Oh, like The Raven?" And he goes, "Do you know any?" Ding! The elevator doors open. And then we walk off. And at the beginning, so we did the rehearsal, and then we go away and we load to shoot the first, take.
Right.
And we get in there and we're standing there and he goes, "How tall do you think I am?" And he was a very short guy. And I'm like, 5'7". He goes, "Don't fuck with me. How tall do you think I am?" And I go, I don't, ding, the elevator doors open and we get off. So the next take, okay, and now I know it's coming, right? Now I know he's going to fuck with me before the ding. So we get in there and I said, that was pretty good. I thought that was a good take. And he goes, "What?" And I go, "Anyway, sorry." And he goes, "I could beat the shit out of you." Ding! And the door
God, I
opened.
love this.
A self-sacrificing defense of his forward position.
What?
And so I asked him about it later, and Durning was like, all about keeping it alive, and not starting a scene, but like rolling into the take. And Harmon would do the same thing. He was really great at keeping an energy going.
Oh my God, Harmon was like the king of it. Harmon was the king of like poking the bear right before the scene started. And you were like, "Why the fuck are you?" And then he'd be like, like poke you again with a toothpick. And you'd be like, "Whoa, that like emotionally, that's stinging me." And he'd be like, "All right, let's do it." And you'd be like, "What?" And I mean, we came from like another world in the theater. You come in, you do the work and blah, blah, blah. But here you're constantly doing the take and you're constant and you don't get that beginning, middle and end that, for example, a play gives you. So you constantly have to revive the emotion. You constantly have to give it a little bit of CPR. And so some actors feel that they have to throw the toothpick at you so they can like, "Oh, I feel it." And then there you go. You know what I mean?
I remember Mark talking about Durning being on your show. And he was telling me about him, how he was a war hero. Yeah. I didn't know this about him, but what you're saying too makes me think that here's this guy. I mean, this was, I don't know when he passed away, but this was late for him, right? And but it sounds like he still gave a shit, like he still cared about which is to me is like you're working with somebody like that and they're still like trying to figure it out and they're still messing with it. And years ago I did this movie called Once Around with Jenna Rollins and she told me, she said every take is a rehearsal, and that means every take you have to fail. Because rehearsal, when you're in the theater, you use rehearsal to kind of fail, to try what doesn't work, not trying to get it right. You try to throw this out and do this. And she would say that, look at your takes, every take that way. So you're not trying to get it. The goal isn't to get it right, to nail it. The goal is to, see if you can fall on your face a little bit. And, there's always editing. They'll figure that out.
We had her on the show and we
oh God, she's...
Yeah,
we loved her.
She was pretty awesome.
She's pretty
she
awesome.
Was there,
yeah,
awesome. She was just pretty like and what a powerhouse of a person, because she sat there completely in her element. It's pretty incredible to watch.
And you guys, when you look at I think too, when you've been on a series for a while, and you look back at the people that have crossed your path, like Robert Wagner, Charles Durning, Jenna Rollins. I mean, it's
Germann.
Incredible. Yeah, exactly.
Greg Germann.
Yeah, that's right.
It's time for the Mickey Mouse Club to end. We've run out of time. But
I think we could do like another hour. Just
goodbye, Donnie. Goodbye, Billy. Goodbye, Bobby.
I feel like we're just getting started.
Goodbye,
so we'll
Jerome.
just call this one part one.
There you go.
There we go.
Well, I'll see you guys. I'll see you guys in Europe. I'll
see you in Budapest.
I'll wait for the call. I'm going to sit here by my phone, and I'm going to sit here by my phone until it rings, and I'm sure I'll hold my breath until it rings.
Okay.
One of the things that I really loved talking about with Greg, his experience being a father. Wasn't that sweet?
Asa, his incredibly talented son, who is a working actor, a significant working actor.
Yeah.
And a very talented one.
Yeah, sometimes that happens, when kids grow up and they see their parents do a job really, really well, and they're intrigued, and then they get the right, support to be able to pursue dreams in full creativity. And then they have talent. I mean, it's like, when it adds up like that, it could be pretty marvelous.
One of my favorite movies in the 80s was The Fabulous Baker Boys with Beau Bridges and Jeff Bridges. And their father, Lloyd Bridges, that same year, I think, was in a movie called Joe versus the Volcano.
Which is one of your favorite movies, because you always talk about that movie. It's also
one of my favorites. But it is one of those things where you imagine that the Bridges boys grew up on their dad's, movie sets and TV sets, and like that, a working family of entertainers. And they learned, I don't know any of the Bridges, but Greg Germann is kind of like that in a way. He's a kind of incredibly supportive, doesn't want to crowd the flame, the young flame. Mm-hmm.
And he's just kind of in awe that his kid wants to hang out with him. I think that was so sweet. Game time, black market organ quiz. So how much are these human parts worth on the black market according to the internet? Wow, this is like intense, and I don't think I would ever choose this game as some sort of game. But
now it's blacked out here, so let's talk about the first one: spleen.
God, I mean, I've never even looked something like this. Is so dark.
I think a spleen is worth like $200.
What?
But what the fuck do you need a spleen for? You don't.
You know what? Wait 1 second. Okay, fine. I'm not even going to get into the moral aspect of this ridiculousness.
Oh, yeah. No, I skipped past the moral thing and I went straight to what's that worth? I'm playing The Price is Right with body parts.
Okay,
but you don't need a spleen to live.
Okay, so how much? How much? What is the answer?
I think it's like $200.
So the answer for how much a spleen is worth on the black market is $500. Okay,
Yes,
so let's go
$500.
into the
See what I
next
mean?
one.
It's like nothing.
Yeah, but by the way, you got it
It's
wrong
like a
by
good
a lot.
bottle of wine.
So
it's like a good bottle of wine.
Oh God, Michael, that is just. I'm just gonna.
Okay, a gallbladder. Knowing what we know, why don't you tell me what you think a gallbladder goes for?
Well, I mean, if a spleen goes for $5, I would imagine a gallbladder goes for something like around 5,500.
Are you 5,000? I think $700. Okay.
$1,200?
I think I'm good at this.
I think you're really good at this, and that just sends shivers. Shivers
are you ready?
up my spine.
Okay. How much is a liver worth, Cody?
Ooh, that's probably expensive. I don't know, but things are so cheap apparently in the black market that I would.
What do you think?
$3,500.
$25,000. Ooh, $157,000. And here we are thinking 25 grand or 3 grand. I'm going to reverse these two. I think we have to start with the kidney first. Knowing that 150 plus thousand for a liver, but you do have 2 kidneys.
So I would go 60,000, 65,000.
I'm still going to stick around 100,000. And drum roll, please. A liver was 157,000. How much for a kidney? $200,000. We're not. Okay. All right. Now we're going to get into the last one is the most disgusting one, skin. So here's the question. Is this like a Silence of the Lambs skin where literally they take give me the skin, all the skin of a human, or is this just a little patch of skin? I don't know the answer to that.
But wait, isn't there like some sort of thing now that you can grow skin,
I bet you can. I'm I'm going to say for skin, 50 grand. Because I got no idea.
You have no idea. I'm going to go 30. I'm going to go 35,000.
$10 per square inch.
Oh, you know what? You pretending that this is like, there's a part of me right now that is looking at you differently. I still love you, but I'm intrigued by this facet of yours that is concerning to me. Concerning. I have a couple of fan questions that I'd like to visit.
Okay.
Gina from Texas, a lot of body parts in this episode. Who made that kind of stuff on NCIS? Do you know that? Because, there was a team of people that did it, and they were all really, really talented and worked very hard.
In the early seasons, it was always an actor, pretty much. So you'd get to work, and there'd be some poor guy lying in the middle of a field.
Some poor chap.
Naked.
Yeah. I remember one of those nights we were, and I think it was season 3, we were like somewhere in Disney Ranch, and it was really cold. It was like a 3 a.m. or like a 4 a.m. And I was freezing my butt off, and I was wearing a jacket, a turtleneck. I was wearing like little, what do you call those little warm things, hand warmers that they were putting on.
Or whatever.
Yeah, like hot pockets. You'd put them on your shoes. And you and I at one point like looked at somebody who was like literally lying on a ditch, like pretty much, playing a dead body. And I was just like, how can that happen? And it was just like this realization, like, you think you're cold. Holy crap.
Yeah. Louis from Michigan says, I noticed that Tony calls McGee picklehead as an insult. Interesting choice. Was that improvised or scripted? Well, Louis. I don't think anyone in that writing office would ever want to incur the wrath of Sean Murray by writing in a script picklehead.
Yeah, no, I think that was a totally, that was a Weatherly moment.
It feels like something
that a Weatherly would do.
That spontaneously erupted from my rather
disruptive behavior.
my rather grim and shallow imagination. Picklehead. So, Rob from Illinois says, why does Abby's lab have a theme, but Ducky's morgue doesn't?
Oh, I think maybe it's just out of respect for the dead. What do you think?
Squad Room had a theme, the little triangle.
Oh, you're right. And you know what? Sometimes when they opened up the elevator, there was another type of music that played. Or maybe I'm wrong. Or maybe that just played in my head.
Ziva's theme was always a very specific thing. It's true.
Which one?
It was all like...
Gibbs' rule of the day is rule number 40. If it seems like someone's out to get you, they are. Now, let's visit this. Let's sort of analyze this, because this could also be an extremely paranoid human being. However, it's Gibbs. So how do you feel about this rule?
I think it's better to err on the side of thinking somebody's out to get you. I have had a few in my life, a few moments of where my common sense and my instincts were screaming at me. And
really?
I was like, I got this. I'm me. I can handle this. And then I get thump, and the universe just goes, don't think you can control the ocean. And I was humbled greatly by my hubris. I had a kind of Pollyanna thing. I think I used to leave my doors unlocked, leave my keys in my car. I just was like, and then I thought, well, if I lose something, then I'll lose it. Or if something gets stolen, it gets stolen. Like, I don't know. Like, nothing's that important. I don't like material things to control me. And it is what it is. Like, let it go.
I know, by the way, I know that side of you. You were very, very trusting when it came to stuff like that. You'd be like, if somebody wants to take it, they take it. In fact, you used to sleep, if I'm not mistaken, with the doors of your house open. And one time they went in and they took like computers and stuff, and you were sleeping.
Yeah, I walked into the kitchen at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I was like, ooh, where's that draft coming from? And all the doors out to my pool were wide open, and my TV was gone. My computer was gone.
Oh, God.
Video camera scared the hell out of me. I just feel like there was a period of time where I just put my trust in the universe, like the universe is right on time. And then that time ended. And now I'm very interested in the people that I do know and love and trust, and establishing new friendships. And
I was having a conversation with my mom, and I was asking her, sometimes I have like, Mom, I need to interview you, and I'll call her and I'll say like, hey, well, when you were young, what about this memory? And what about this? And, there's so many things about my mom that sometimes we go through day things, like daily things. And you think you know your mom, but then sometimes I'm like, no, but I really want to know more. And so I get very specific and I ask very specific questions. And somewhere in the midst of all of this, interrogating and, in the past couple of years, at one point she said something about trust that fully like pierced my heart. And I remember thinking like, oh my God. And I grew up knowing that my grandfather, so my mother's father, was like her great big love. Like this was a man that she really, truly cherished, like really loved. And it was probably the person, as she describes it growing up as a child, the person that she loved and admired the most. And so she was very little, and at one point she was going down the stairs. And I think it was kind of mutual. Like he really loved her, she really loved him. They had like a special connection. And at one point she was like a couple of steps before she reached like the end of the hallway kind of a thing. And it was a big staircase. And she said something like, oh, Daddy. And she sort of like leaned against her father, and she turned around and her father pushed her the last 2 or 3 steps. And to her horror, she turned to her father and she said, and she started crying. And he almost started crying. And he looked at her and he said, trust no one. And it was such a lesson. And of course, I try to find the beauty in that, because there's a part of me that's like, that is atrocious. Oh my God, that's awful, But there's also a part of that I think when you become a father, when you become a mother, when you become a parent, you want to take care of those you love dearly so much. And the toughest lessons sometimes are the ones that you can teach them by, in a way, almost hurting them, And I don't mean to be a psychologist or any of that, but I guess I'm trying to find the lesson in that from a loving place. And it's a hard thing for me as a mom today and as a daughter to reconcile, because I just think it was a really tough thing to learn for my mom.
Thank you for sharing that, Cody.
Isn't that a crazy story?
Yes, it is. And there's a lot to think about there. Can you take us into next week
Yes.
on what we're going to do next week? I think this week we went deep, but what's going to happen next week?
Next week, time to look ahead for next week's episode. Don't forget that you can watch all episodes on Paramount Plus, and that you can catch new episodes of NCIS on CBS. So next week on Off Duty, the team investigates when an ambulance carrying the body of a Marine who recently died explodes without warning. However, things take a turn when Ducky confirms that DNA lifted from the body doesn't match the dead Marine, resulting in the team launching an investigation into who is responsible. Boom! There goes the boom. Ready or not, it's season 3, episode 16, Family Secret. Hi, I'm Cody DePablo.
I'm sorry, who are you?
I'm Cody DePablo.
You're fantastic is what you are. I'm Michael Weatherly, and I'm just happy to be here.
And this is Off Duty. Yeah.
When I think of the words off and duty, and then you put them together, but off is a mosquito repellent spray.
Right.
And duty can be a pile of poo-poo, or it can be, if we spell it correctly, duty, your job.
Right. You're bound to something. Duteous.
Duty, yes. Well, we are going to be discussing this episode, season 3 of episode 16 of the NCIS. And it's called Family Secret.
We have a very special guest today. Do you want to tell us who that is?
We have Rocky Carroll coming on the show, which is more than special, because Rocky and I have known each other really through the stars, through the universe, because
when did you meet Rocky?
I met him on the show, but we have the same birthday.
Oh.
Yeah, Rocky and I and Kevin Bacon, we're all triplets. We're just all born on the same.
You guys have so many similarities.
We're footloose and fancy free. Welcome to Off Duty, an NCIS Rewatch podcast. Today on the show, Season 3, Episode 16, Family Secret. An ambulance ignites and explodes after picking up the body said to be that of a Marine Lance Corporal who died due to a car wreck. Gibbs and company investigate, partly to determine the identity of the body. Can I tell you, I'm going to do what we like to do here on the Off Duty. I'm going to do a little flashback. Can I do a flashback? Okay.
Do a flashback.
At the time of this episode's release on Friday. No, it wasn't Friday. It was February 28th. It was always a Tuesday when our show came out.
It's always a Tuesday day. Come on now, you know that.
7 Central. February 28th, 2006. Here's what happened. A New Jersey company is accused of harvesting body parts from New York funeral homes for transplants. What the hey? An estimated 12,000 people received the body parts.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. Aaron Carter released his third and final compilation album. Too good to be true. Yeah, I don't know anything about that, but I do know that the world's population at that time was 6.5 billion, and I think we're tipping 8 billion now, aren't we?
You're kidding me.
No, I think that's true.
Oh my God. Well, that's a lot of billions.
We're hurtling towards 10 billion. It's very exciting to do these little look backs, but as I was saying to you in our little pregame before, this is the first time that I had a little moment. I'm very good at contextualizing this show and the characters and understanding why you have to have certain people behave a certain way so that we can make fun of people's behavior. And I know that I am the carrot in front of the donkey for that many times. But I cringed at a couple of things that I was doing.
You really think Lance Corporal Danforth picked his own death?
You got a better theory?
Actually, we do, Tony.
And also some of the wardrobe choices. Again, I understood why Tony DiNozzo would be acting that way and dressing like that. But I did
You are so into the wardrobe. It's not even funny, but I love those pants and how like straight and sort of like slightly wide they are. They're really cute, and I kept on thinking like you looked like an 8-year-old does. Like, you know, that's how cute you looked, like playing basketball. Because of the pants, not because of anything you were doing. Like you weren't doing anything particularly cute. You were playing basketball, but the wardrobe made you look like particularly adorable. And I'm not sure if that was intentional or if that was just like, oh yeah, no, that's the way. I don't know.
Well, he's such a dork. DiNozzo's such a dork. Boss, I know what you're saying, and I have to agree with you. Like all that stuff. I'm just like, oh, Jesus. All right. I'm going to give you an episode synopsis.
No, wait, can I say something? Because at one point we are not there, actually. Thank God.
Be kind. I'm a little sensitive today. Just be kind.
No. Okay, it's got nothing to do with you. I told you right when the cameras went off. No, I love you so much, but I really love that beard. It makes you look very morsel-y. Like a morsel. Morsel-y. That's a good word. Anyway, so I will say there's a scene where Polly Perrette has like a freaking monologue.
Accident or not an accident? That is the question. Our first player, an innocent differential housing bolt that is rubbing and straining on the molecular bonds of our bolt.
All of it is like this gibberish. And I just remember watching and just kind of, stay like just glued in just awe and amazement and like what just came out of her mouth with such ease. And I was like, oh my God, it made me think about what John Cryer was saying. Like, you guys were doing that particular genre very well. And then I thought, well, did we? And then all of a sudden I watched the show and I see Abby Sciuto, Polly Perrette doing that. And I just went, holy crap, she was so great,
So
and that particular scene, like, just so effortless and so on the money and delivering all of that crazy exposition. Because I thought you and Sean were like the kings of that. And all of a sudden I watched this and I was like, oh, Booyakasha schooled. I was like, that's like, she was so on it.
We are going to get into this episode, and we're going to talk about it a little bit more. But can I give you the synopsis of today's episode?
Yes, please do.
The team investigates when an ambulance carrying the body of Marine, who recently died, explodes without warning. However, things take a turn when Ducky confirms that the DNA lifted from the body doesn't match the dead Marine, resulting in the team launching an investigation as to who could have been responsible for the ambulance's explosion and the reasons behind it.
Well, you know what the funny thing is? There are very few moments that you get to see character stuff unveil where you really get to see sort of like who these people are from like a value standpoint, you know? Huh. And this is a key episode for me when it comes to Gibbs, because he does something that is totally not legal within the legal spectrum of things.
He opens that evidence bag.
Oh, not only did he mess with and tampered with, you know, evidence, but he did it for all the right reasons. And it's so cool that the actual episode walks you through this and it unveils all of this really kind of heavy duty complexity as to what's wrong and what's right. And then what you think it's wrong versus what you think it's right. And at the end, he makes this choice to do the right thing, which is totally wrong, you know, but he does it for a good reason. And it left me thinking about it for just an instant. And it's not like you and I are watching NCIS reruns all the time, but when I do, I kind of hone in and I'm like, oh, I wonder what this is. And I completely forget what the episode was about. And then towards the end of it, I was just like, oh, isn't that such a nugget of character development for the beloved character of Gibbs? Like, isn't that such a great moment that is so much about, you know, for a guy that's very much structured and like, we must do the right thing, you know, that he does the wrong thing for the right reasons.
Well, okay. So
because that's who he is. And inevitably, I was like, oh, I loved him.
I'll walk you through another right thing for the wrong reasons. For Jenny Shepard to be sitting at his desk, getting information from us, and then he walks in and he gets his little undershorts in a twist, and he's like, oh, this is my team. And then he goes up to Jenny's office and sits behind her desk, and he's like,
dramatic, but duly noted, Agent Gibbs. I get it.
How do you like it when someone sits behind your desk? Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Tibbs. You are not Mr. Tibbs. Sidney Poitier is Mr. Tibbs. You're Mr. Gibbs. And if the director of NCIS wants to sit behind your desk, she can sit anywhere she wants in that thing. She's the director of NCIS.
And you're absolutely correct. But I do think it has to do with
lover. He's a spurned, jealous lover.
That's exactly it. I was just going to say the same thing. I think at that moment really is not about like power positions within the NCIS, you know, world, you know, whatever the agency is. But I really think at that moment, it's a personal FU. Like, you did this to me, and watch what I'm going to do to you. And it's not at all about like NCIS dynamics, you know, within the power, you know. Mm-hmm. But I do think it has to do with their relationship. And then when he brings the steak and he brings the thing and they sit down and they have that moment, it's such a great, it's weird, but it's kind of earned, right? And I have to say that I really enjoyed Lauren Holly in this episode.
Her hair was fantastic. She looked like the heat miser. She looked like the heat miser from those old...
like a tiny little elf that was delicious with red.
It looked like it was actually on fire sometimes.
Yeah. But I thought it was a really good episode for her, too. It showed her strength. It showed her kind of going like, okay, boo-hoo, really, you're going to get mad at this? Okay, noted. It's fine. And then it showed her kind of being stern when she had to be and calling him when you know, and
she's growing into it a little bit. She's growing into the part.
Totally. Yeah. Totally. And I thought that was kind of fun.
So peel this onion with me a little bit if we can find these corollary or corollary, if you're British. DiNozzo is on McGee's computer in the beginning. There is an invasion of McGee's space.
Who is this? Well, it's definitely not Agent Larson.
Gotta be his sister.
Why?
You kidding? This girl's way out of McGeek's league.
In the same way that Shepard invades Gibbs' space and then Gibbs invades Shepard's space, in the same way that we're crossing a lot of boundaries and lines, and there's a lot of impropriety. There's a lot of doing the right thing. Even the two paramedics in the very beginning are having a banter back and forth where he's like, what should I do? Should I do the right thing? It's like, you really feel that it wasn't written by a team of writers. You feel like it was written by a writer. Do you know what I'm saying? It wasn't some gang-banged plot.
No. I do agree with you because they're really toying around with a point.
Yeah, all the strands, even the two paramedics who I thought were both great in the beginning.
Great.
They almost felt like they were being given series regulars banter dialogue.
Hey to her. I don't know what I look like. The serial what's his face guy? Go with your gut. You got the release? No, didn't you get it? You know what? On second thought, maybe you better not go with your gut.
I mean, they were being given total Ziva McGee, like, hey, so I've got this date on Thursday. He's like, what do you think I am, Ann Landers? I'm not going to answer your question about these. Like, yeah, I know, but you have more experience than me. I mean, it's like, it's not that we just have them there going, time of death is 5:03. What, like some very pedantic. No, we're inside their lives in media res. We have no idea what they're talking about, and it will come to nothing. We will never find out what happens on that paramedic's date, but we know. And when Tony is asking McGee what happened on the date, and McGee is like, it's a private thing. And he's like, McGee, a gentleman always kisses and tells. Like, he's so wrong. And so there's this sense of when Gibbs fucks with the evidence, it's consistent with the tone of the episode.
Totally.
Where people are misbehaving. People are behaving incorrectly.
Yes, some people are misbehaving because they're
doing it for the right reason, maybe. And
certainly Gibbs for the right reason. I mean, there's like a high moral thing there that's being explored. Like what is and what isn't.
You get a head slap in this one.
Oh, I get a head slap. Absolutely.
Going for coffee.
Oh, what was that for?
Alerting Denozo.
And Gibbs slaps his own head. Gibbs slaps his own head. So this is like,
how geeky are we right now that we're just like, oh, and he gets a slap, and you get, and we're like, oh yeah.
I got a gentle slap.
You got a gentle one. I got a hard one, and he gives himself the hardest slap.
Oh, the hardest one. Yeah. Boy, I mean, how we've talked about some of the episodes in season 3 where we were like model behavior. We weren't really crazy about model behavior, right? That happened.
Yeah. I remember.
I don't want to nag any of them particularly because they all have their little.
Oh, they all have
all
great
kind
moments.
Of right, and they also are sort of they're different folks for different strokes for different folks, and moods. They're different mood pieces, but this one. I really felt across the whole thing. James Whitmore Jr. directing. I thought just a really strong and funny. The Zamfir flute stuff, silly, totally. And also, I felt like Ziva has gotten involved in the hijinks, even though she's judgy and but she's complicit in some. She's not telling McGee, Denozo's behind your stuff, and this is totally bullshit. She's like, I guess she's like, you shouldn't be doing this, but she's kind of enjoying that they're doing this. And
she's definitely the middle child. She's right there kind of watching it all and playing politician, but I'm in it, but I'm not in it because I'm technically not doing it. And
Gibbs wants you to, he knows that it's good for team unity. And there's a great scene when we're coming down from Jenny's office and we're all coming down and we're saying, well, Ziva gave in first. And you're like, I did not get it. And then, McGee's like, well, no, that's not exactly what happened. And he's like, and you, my loyal St. Bernard, held out for what, 30
20
seconds?
Yeah.
Director kind of suckered me into that deal.
Ziva caved first.
I didn't cave in. I was trying.
McGee next.
Boss, it wasn't what.
And my loyal St. Bernard held out till last.
And I'm limping down the stairs, and we're just
all
such
Dad.
team of misfits. But you see the really clear delineation of character, and of course, we're overthinking this. That's what podcasts are for. But it is really beautiful to see that team coming down those stairs with, I have to say, a very attractive father figure. He's tough when he needs to be, but he's not so gruff and grim and stern and dour that he's not relatable. You know, there's something about Gibbs in this episode that you feel the conflict, but you don't feel like he's impenetrable.
Yes, but you know what? And that's a really good point. I don't think...
He lets you in a little bit.
The audience is let in because we are still very much like, you know, dad figure, we need to do our best. And then, of course, there's that moment when McGee says, until we die, like, we'll do it until we die or something like that.
You had to say that in front of him? You had to say until we... You put that in his head?
What is that? Yeah. So there's that moment. But he doesn't say no, or he just kind of stays there and like holds the silence, you know? But you did bring up a really good point. The audience is allowed to see that part of Gibbs that makes him highly lovable. And the audience usually are the only ones that are allowed to see what most of these characters are really like, because a lot of those moments really take place within the sanctity of privacy moments, an elevator or this or that, you know, and they're the ones that get to see it. But none of the team does. We just kind of sort of understand it.
You know, when I think about this little podcast that we're doing, this little off-duty exploration of the times of NCIS back through that kaleidoscopic lens, when we're watching these shows, and I know that we've touched on this a little bit, but unlike, like if I was to go back and watch some other shows that I've been a part of, I would have different emotional responses and different memories and stuff. But this, particularly season 3, into season 4, there's something that happened. And I think that's really interesting that we're doing this season 3 exploration, because something changed in your life. Something changed fundamentally in my life. It was like the universe for us, for me, and I think for you, shifted on its axis. Things would never be the same again. And so watching these shows, it's really kind of interesting to see. We have like a little scrapbook.
Well, do you remember that year, and I'm not sure if we talked about it, and forgive me if we have, to all the people listening, but
it was not the year of compassion.
No, it was the year of forgiveness, right? Or was it the year of compassion? It was the year of compassion.
No, it wasn't the year of compassion yet. That was coming.
Oh, the year of compassion was coming. Okay, got it.
Yeah. No, we were
So this was the year of the free fall.
I think this was the year of, jumping out of the plane and then going, oh, fuck, a parachute.
And we're like, we've got a bunch. Just hold on. It'll come eventually.
Look for something soft to land on. Oh, look, a circus tent.
It did feel like that. But also like in the exhilarating way. You know what I mean? I mean, have you ever done that? Parachute?
I almost did once. I almost did out in Long Island. It's right after I finished Dark Angel and was going through a little bit of a romantic, thing.
I was going to say, was it fueled by some sort of heartbreak, or, by the way, the opposite? It was
heartbreak.
Which is
that was a very difficult time, and I sort of figured I should do things that would blow up any sense of that, that I should challenge myself. I think that's the best way to say it.
How did it go? Did you ever jump?
Well, I spent the night before with the guys I was going to jump with, and we got so excited. We were doing shots of tequila and everything, and then I went back to my hotel room.
And then you couldn't get up in the morning.
And I didn't get up in the morning. I overslept. Of course,
you were like, you know what? If I just celebrate this moment, I won't have to do it.
If I would be the guy vomiting in midair with the vomit coming back in his face.
Oh no! Or actually maybe passing out, and then of course somebody else would have to pull the chute for you.
I have a memory that you may remember.
Oh, God. Is it good, or is it going to make me...
No, it makes me look like an idiot, which is probably the correct
I love
memory. It. Yeah. It's not like trying to find a truffle. I mean, a memory where I look like an idiot is a pretty... They're all over the place. They're like dandelions in the spring. So I remember that when the van blew up.
Oh, no. Get out. Get out. Get out. Get out. Go, go, go.
And Larry Fuentes couldn't wait to blow up that van. And by the way, that was a real explosion. That's not fake flames. That is black smoke coming out of that explosion. Mm-hmm. And It is a real fire. That is a big, real fire. They blew the heck out of that thing. That day in the parking lot, because what they do is they shoot the first scene where the paramedics and everybody, and then then they redress the set and we play the crime scene. But we were there for the explosion because they brought us to the location. So we were there. And I turned to you and I said, I'm going to write and direct and star in a movie that I'm preparing to do. And you were like, oh, you're going to write and direct and star. And I said, yeah, I've decided that's what I'm going to do.
Oh, God, and I remember, I think I laughed a little, did I?
You laughed loudly.
Yeah.
And so I vowed at that time never to do that because I...
No, that's not it. That's not the story. The story is so infinitely deeper than that. Because I think we were like so absorbed with this process and we were just acting. I mean, not that it's nothing, because it was a lot and it was a load and, and we were doing long hours for people that don't know it. That season, I think before that, of course, you did longer hours, but we were still doing 17-hour days and, long hours. So we were spending a lot of time together. And I remember when you said that to me, I just remember giggling and being like, do you really think you can do all of it?
I'm going to design the costumes. I'm going to make all my own clothing.
Yeah,
I'm going to prepare
make all
the
your
food.
own. It's going to be just like a Michael Weatherly show, and I remember that was like the riff on, and it was just going to be the Michael Weatherly show. But how appropriate, because that was season 3. It was just so appropriate to think big, think.
I had some delusions of grandeur. Do you remember Corporal Merrill stuttering?
This about Billy, miss?
If you mean Lance Corporal Danforth, yes. Yes, I do.
But on set, but when he wasn't acting?
No.
I think that was just a choice for the character.
No,
anyway,
it was written in.
I love this episode, and I would suggest to anybody who hasn't seen it recently, go enjoy this one. It's a rock and roll ride.
It's a really good one. And by the way, with the whole stuttering thing, he did have the first scene in which he actually apologizes for his stutter. Then in the following scene, he doesn't have a stutter at all, which is very bizarre. But then maybe it's because he's in front of people and and that's where he feels comfort. I don't know. I thought it was a very interesting thing, and I think he did a really fine job.
Well, what we're going to do right now, Cody DePablo, is we are going to go and introduce our guest for today's episode.
Our very beloved Rocky Carroll.
Rocky 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Rocky the Rock, who was on a sitcom called Rock, actually. We'll get into that. Rocky Carroll, can we bring you in here? Where are you, Rocky? Get in here.
Doctor, how's your mother doing? He was so out of his mind that he stabbed himself. Right. Should have seen that one coming. Okay, and? Tell him to leave us alone. Let us do our jobs. Don't let me interrupt, Agent Donoso. Well, I see Agent Donoso's been keeping you entertained.
You let us watch Jaws.
Yeah, I can see that. Don't make me separate you three. Take the elevator. Could have made yourself more at home. Well, it's good to see you too, Gibbs. The chair was killing my back. I never wanted that kind of justice before. But since the other night, hell, that's all I think about.
Rocky Carroll, here's a few things people don't know about him. He was born in Toulouse, France in 1923. He has served in three world wars.
I'm 101 years old.
He has starred in over 4,000 episodes of NCIS. He has directed 622 as Rocky Carroll, and he has directed another 41 as Roscoe Carroll, and for reasons no one knows.
But by the way, when you said he was born in Toulouse, there was a moment.
You actually thought he was telling the truth,
This is
didn't
how
you?
nerdy I am. Like,
Hi, Rocky.
Hey, guys.
How are you?
Rocco.
Cotita.
Yeah, how are you? I miss you.
I'm crazy. I was doing all the dog and pony show yesterday. They had me at 6 a.m. I was on like Good Morning Scranton and like all this. I was just all over the place. So
congratulations, 1,000 episodes.
1,000 episode of which you've done what? 348? How many?
Yes, I'm in the 300s. And that's certified to get you in the Hall of Fame in baseball. I don't know about television, but
well, you did 97. You did 97 Chicago Hopes. You were like you were about to get to 100, and they were like, and that's enough of you. And then I know you did another show called Rock.
I did.
Well, we'll get into it. I just want to say, first of all, I love you, my birthday brother.
And you, and both of you. I mean, when they told me that you two whack-a-moles were doing a podcast and that I was supposed to come on and just chop it up and talk about absolutely nothing in particular except for all the, love and history and all that. I said, well, there's no way I could say no, because this is what we were doing this for many, many years. This is what we did between takes anyway. So
oh my God, there's so much. And it's funny because no one knows this, but we sat around those blue chairs forever.
Can we start with the beginning or begin with the starting?
Yeah.
Wait, I know there's a song in there somewhere.
Begin at the beginning, right?
There's a guy named Mark Harmon. And you knew him before we all knew him.
Right, because I had it put in a contract very early on that any show that Mark Harmon's in, I either have to join at some point later or be a part of. He didn't know that I had that stipulation in the contract. So imagine his surprise when I was on NCIS.
And all of a sudden you just show up. And by the way, I remember your first episode.
I know, but I want Rocky to tell the story about the toothpick.
Oh God. I mean, well, there's so many different angles on that, but what I do remember is, Harmon and I had worked together, just to, for clarity's sake. Yeah. He and I were both late additions to, Chicago Hope. It had already been established, it was the Mandy Patinkin show. And then 3 seasons later, Mandy decided that he no longer wanted to be the lead on a CBS drama, and he went off to greener pastures. And then they brought in me and Harmon, and we were together for 3 seasons on that show. And then we kind of lost touch with each other. And the next thing I know, he was doing this show about some agency I'd never heard of.
And you had done a show called The Agency.
I had, indeed,
which was a very good show. Sean Cassidy Productions, if I recall correctly.
Sean Cassidy was our executive producer, and it was about the CIA. And I think were it not for the attacks at 9/11, we might have stayed on a little longer, because after that, nobody really wanted to watch, because what was going on in the real world was exactly what we were doing. And it was, I think it was a little bit of sensory overload.
Too much.
It was too much.
Now you worked with, on that show, you worked with Will Patton. What an interesting actor.
Very interesting actor.
But there were some very talented people on The Agency, some very interesting people.
Gloria Rubin, Gil Bellows. It was a really interesting. Daniel Benzali, who was from NYPD Blue. So, who fancied himself as a lounge lizard. He was a singer. He was to see Daniel Benzali, who plays this kind of, Dick Cheney kind of character, like, he had a whole like cabaret thing that went through. That's another story for another time.
This is a podcast. We like those stories.
You started off in the theater, right?
I did. I was a stage actor. Classically trained stage actor. Moved to New York and after college in the mid 80s, and I said to myself, well, this is going to be my life. I'm going to be a New York-based actor. Whenever actors whenever we make determinations about what we're going to do, like wait a year and see what happens. So I was like, yep, this is it. This is my life. I'm going to be a New York actor. I'm going to go to regional theaters and New York and Broadway, and occasionally I'll dip my toe into Los Angeles, California, if work presents itself. That all changed in about 3.5 years. I came out here, I did a pilot in 1990 and never went back.
What about Born on the 4th of July? I remember you telling me about that experience.
What's so weird is that our director of photography, William Webb, he and I were in that movie. He was Bob Richardson's assistant, the director of photography on that. Bill Webb and I were both in the same sphere, in the same room, working on the same film. And I don't think he and I probably spoke to each other once. So, fast forward 20 some odd years later, he's our DP on NCIS.
And he's not just a DP, right? And as a director of I think I said 642 episodes now.
646.
But for the people that do know what a director of photography is, William Webb isn't just a director of photography. He's a Steadicam operator. And on a lot of TV shows, a director of photography, DOP, will do, or DP, will do half. So you'll have two DPs. One will be prepping while the other's directing. That's very standard in the industry.
Not on NCIS. Yeah.
No. And then not only does he
I was just going to say, no, that's not what happened to NCIS.
No. Not only does he DP every episode, but he's also the Steadicam operator, which, is really a huge amount of work.
It's insane.
And when Cote first started, she looked around one day and we were in the squad room and I don't know if you remember this, Cote, but you said, Shetty, I have a question. Who is the director of photography? And I said, that guy. And I pointed at Billy with the Steadicam rig on. And she goes, No. The director of photography is the very quiet man who stands by Video Village with a lens around his, on a necklace and makes very quiet comments to the director about sort of how much time he needs to put in. That was not Willie Webb, and that is not Willie Webb.
Wiggly Squiggly Webb. That's what we called him because he was kind of all over, and he was like this squibbly little thing. And
he still is.
The thing about the beginning is that because I was not well versed in the world of like many cameras just kind of going all around you, and I came more from the world of that kind of focused one-on-one in the theater kind of a thing, I didn't, I don't think you ever get used to it, but I certainly in my first episode, I was not used to the idea that there was, the cameras were set up and then all of a sudden you had this steady camera who would just basically just move all around you like some sort of fly and catch little bits of you and you and you, and you just never knew where the camera was going to be. So you had to be very focused about the thing that you were doing, and you had to maintain some level of eye line and some level of connection, even if the camera was going like boom, boom in front of you. And that was very, very challenging. But, I have to say, he is very talented at doing all of it. And the Steadicam stuff that he does is pretty remarkable.
When you come from the theater as a stage actor, I really thought it was like the first couple of years of just acting in front of the camera. It was like one big hazing. I felt like this must be like what freshman hazing is like when you go to when you join a fraternity, because it's so, you come from the theater, you're stage actor, you're not used to you're able to look, make eye contact with the person that you're speaking to. But in the world of television, there's a crew of about 30 people who are also standing right over, on the other side of you. And sometimes, rest in peace, our buddy Terry, the director would sometimes be standing on the set watching the scene. And as a stage actor, I just had to learn how to, like you said, how to refocus, because I'm not used to the crew being on the stage with you. I'm not used to the...
And also the thing that no one teaches you, especially, for example, in theater school and all that stuff, is that at some point, if you ever have the privilege of doing anything for the camera, that you would have to learn that as you go. It's like instant soup, or however you want to, it's like you just have to do it.
You got to learn the language. It's like you don't get the the Rosetta Stone version. It's like you're in the country, you'll figure out how to ask where the bathroom is eventually, because it's because you just got to keep doing it enough, and you learn, oh, that's what that means.
But don't you think that in a way there's a little bit of ignorance is bliss in the process of that? Because I do think that not knowing, and obviously having that kind of focus that you get in the theater, which is such a good school. But by the way, there's so many great actors that don't come from the theater. So it's like, boo-hoo, whatever. It's like, whatever works for you, it's fine. At the end of the day, talent's talent. And many people that, by the way, come from the theater and they try to transition into that, they go, what? And they just can't make the transition. So there is no formula that guarantees that you're going to be able to make it work, But it is a fascinating thing that you kind of go like, did you figure it out? And then you kind of go like, yeah, I mean, I had to, and
had to, because
how you figure it out and all of that. And
it's kind of sink or swim, but you're doing what you know, and you're like, oh my, you're giving it your all to a scene, and then you got to do it again because like you were in somebody's shadow, or there was a mic thing, and it's so frustrating because you're thinking, well, can't we just can't we just fix that in post? Do we really have to do it again because somebody's shirt was making a sound on the mic or whatever? But after a while, you start to, it's part of the language. You learn the language. I learned no matter how good the scene is, if I'm half in Cody's light and I'm blocking the shadow, we're gonna do this scene, we're gonna do this again, or we're gonna stop and redo it. And you start to make those adjustments. And I realized over time, it's like I'm learning the language now. It's like,
but the funny thing is, you always say, well, I always say, my best work no one's seen.
Because it's on somebody else's coverage.
Because it's somebody else's coverage, or all of a sudden because the cameras are not on you. Maybe you're going to try something different, or you're so not aware of what's going on and just so present that all of a sudden you're like, oh damn it, that was so good, and you just kind of go, well, that's what it is. Sometimes you're lucky enough that the camera gets it. Sometimes it just it's a gift for somebody else.
I have a little NCIS centric question, which is, did you watch this one at all? It was from season 3. We're talking about season 3 right now. And here's my question to you, Rocky. When you were coming onto the show, did you look at the previous, so seasons 1, 2, 3, and 4 were kind of weird.
They were.
But then Don Belisario got fired or whatever happened.
The creator of the show was asked not to return.
But wait, why do you say that it was weird? I want to know. I want to know about that.
Because the shooting style was much more haphazard and chaotic. And when Shane Brennan came over and took over in the beginning of season 5, it became much more classic. It became, the camera didn't move as much. They have something called an axis, right? So that is the line between two actors. And if you're on this side of the line, then the other camera will be back there on this side of the line looking back. And to cross the line is to go over on this side. And on the first 100 episodes of the show, we crossed the line. We would do jump cuts through time. We would compress time, jump things. For instance, in this episode we're talking about today, Gibbs walks out of the room and Denozo watches him walk out, and then they cut to the other side of the line and Denozo goes like that and Gibbs is at the top of the stairs, like Mighty Mouse, like he's just jumped up.
The director needs to see you in her office ASAP.
And what Shane was always doing was a more classical approach. And I think Gary Glassberg expanded on that classic sort of shooting style. And it's become, the camera doesn't move as much in that sort of haphazard way. Right. My question is sort of twofold for you about that. So did you watch any of that before you got to the show and think, well, hold on, what kind of crazy show is this? And had you directed before? Did you have designs on directing? And what's it like directing now? That's the big thing.
I'm just imagining while you talking about all that, especially about, crossing the line and being on the wrong side of the line. I just have this image of Suzanne McRobert, chain smoking, because now two-fisted trying to keep tabs on which side of the line we're on.
She was our script supervisor, Suzanne McRobert, and she's so good.
She still is the script supervisor.
She still is the supervisor.
She's so good.
And like Michael was saying about DPs, in the outside world, in the world outside of NCIS, I've worked on shows where every episode there are alternating DPs and alternating script supervisors. So the episode I directed an episode of another series, which is no longer with us, but I had the DP with me for the entire prep week because he wasn't actively working on the show. I've never had Billy Webb and I the only time we get together on an episode before it shoots is the tech scout, because he's busy shooting it. And when I came back, I was like a kid. I was like, guys, they have 2 directors of photography on Magnum PI. They do all this stuff. They got 3 cameras going at the same time. There's all this stuff. And they looked at me like I had 7 heads, and they were like, yeah, but I was like,
yeah, but we've been on for 21 years.
Exactly. So it was a very short conversation. They were like, we're glad you had a good time and you saw some new innovation, and now let's get back to work. So, but it was, to answer your question, I remember when, after my initial meetings with Charles Johnson and Shane Brennan, and this character was like we were going to bring this character in, who was not director of NCIS at the time. He was maybe an assistant director. I forget what the title was. Mm-hmm. It was a 5-6 episode arc. And I think maybe 2 or 3 days, maybe a week before we started filming the episode, I woke up one morning and there was just a box of DVDs, a big box that said NCIS production. And it was a box full of DVDs of every episode from the last 5 seasons. And it was basically like, good morning, Mr. Phelps. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, watch all these episodes. Oof. And literally, I'd watch them and I'd looking for sort of continuity in the making of it. And one episode was like, wow, they were like snowflakes. A lot of them were like, just as far as styles and how things went and how the camera moved. And there was like sort of this, and I said, sometimes I felt like I was on a ride because the camera was like, well, almost every line there was like, you go from a tight size to the wide and it was like all the stuff that was going on. And I thought, okay, this is how it works. But I remember watching, I was like, my homework is to kind of watch all the shows. So I felt kind of like I was caught up by the time we started filming, and I started, I became a member of the cast. But I always felt like I was still doing it was kind of a new show because I felt like that there was no, set formula, per se, that I was able to kind of come in, that this season was into season 5, season 6, there was a new feel. Shane Brennan was now at the helm. So even though the show had been on for 5 seasons, prior to me, I felt like I was coming to something that was very new in style and everything else. And it really was.
Well, I think for us, it was the same because, of course, you came in and you brought forth a brand new energy and a brand new, and we had to redefine our identity as a group of people. And then we started gelling together. And I think that's what the show has always been, the additions and the exits and how it morphs and how it changes. And
do you remember, Cody, what happened at the end of season 5? That's when it's when Jenny Shepard is killed and Mike Franks, they have a big shootout. And then we get in trouble and we have to go in front of the new director, and the new director sends us off to the far-flung corners of the earth. If I'm remembering correctly.
The season finale is that this guy who's like now the boss from hell basically assigns everybody to these like remote locations.
Yeah,
and
Proby gets sent down to the computer room. I get sent to Agent Afloat. We all get sent to these different things because we're being punished because we were supposed to protect the director of NCIS and she got killed.
And she got shot up.
Yeah, she also had cancer that was terminal, so that would have been Genozo's argument. Like, she was kind of gonna die. But anyway, I want you to tell the toothpick story. And your friend Mark Harmon is such a great prankster, and I think it deserves so much credit for the levity in that situation and also the bonding in that situation, if you could share it.
Yeah, and you guys, you feel free to jump in on it, but what I remember most is that, like you said, Harmon being the ultimate prankster, that seminal scene where, the entire cast is lined up in the director's office and Vance is basically saying, I'm sending you into the wilderness to punish you for your sins. And there's this big thing where everybody's being handed their sentence, so to speak. And we'd established that Director Vance had this habit of chewing a toothpick because our technical advisor, Leon Carroll, who my character was so aptly named after, it was an actual habit that he had, that he was, if you saw him, he always had this toothpick in the side of his mouth. So they gave that little quirk to my character as well. But I remember, and in this seminal moment, there was a very heavy, very serious moment where all the agents at NCIS were learning their fate. Harmon had instructed each one of you to conceal a toothpick in your mouth. And at the time so now the cameras are over the backs of all the other cast members, and it's my coverage, so the cameras are directly on me. So I'm looking into the eyes of each of you.
And it's intense. It's an intense moment, and you're delivering like a Rocky Carroll intensity.
And I'm giving it my best. I'm trying to lay it on thick. I'm giving it the blue steel as best blue steel as I can with each one, because I know the camera's on me. This is my moment. It's tight coverage. This is it, baby. And then suddenly out of nowhere, like each of the actors standing there suddenly flicks a toothpick out of their mouths that they've been concealing for the entire time, led by Mark Harmon. And Mark Harmon had prefaced this prank by saying, we're going to do, and I think people were a little hesitant because guys new to the show, let's not get him too ruffled. And I think Harmon may have said he says, don't worry, he's not going to break. It was basically kind of a bet that we're going to do this right on his coverage. He's the only one who's going to see it. It's the equivalent of kind of dropping your pants almost when somebody is, it's on their coverage. And, I'm proud to say that he was right. So by the time I get to the end of that, whatever that speech is, when I've banished you all to the wilderness, there's an entire row of actors standing there with toothpicks in their mouth that only I can see. And there's just this moment where, and for an interminably long period of time, nobody's yelling cut because they're waiting to see if I'm just going to fucking drop, right? So finally we cut. I didn't break, and then by the time when the camera stopped rolling, we all had a very big laugh about it. But I think Harmon's thing was, I told you he wasn't going to break. He's not going to break.
So true.
Rocky, I want to know something about your audition for NCIS, your process of getting the part of Vance. What was it? Because I think I remember asking you at one point, but I think it's just kind of vague and foggy in my mind. I want to revisit that.
Honestly, my audition for NCIS was my history with CBS. I never had to read any copy. I never had to. I literally.
So you were just basically handed a part. Were you just like, hey, offered a part?
I had a general meeting with Shane Brennan, Charles Johnson, and I always say to people, I only knew one guy connected to the NCIS universe, and it was number one on the call sheet.
That's not a bad connection to have.
And I had a great relationship because at that point, I had done, I think, 3 different series for CBS. And CBS, if anybody knows, if they like you, they like you. So, I mean, and there were a couple of cast members on the current edition of NCIS who also have a history of, like, you can follow, oh, Katrina Law, she was on this show, she was on that show. And I had a very great working relationship. Les Moonves would always, I had done 2 comedies, 2 dramas, I think, prior to this. So it was sort of, put him in a room, sit across from him, and if you like what you see and hear, he's already been greenlit by the studio and by the network. And then there's the Harmon that you never know. He'll never tell you, but I always tell people, it's like, it was Harmon who basically said, that I'm giving him the thumbs up.
And question, had you seen the show? Were you familiar with the show? Or were you like, oh yeah, that's one of those shows, but
I may have seen 1 or 2 episodes, but not enough to be, I'm glad they didn't quiz me on any of the episodes at the time when I was there, but not long after.
Welcome to the quiz part of our show, Rocky.
If you pass this, you'll get the part.
You know what? You taught me to recognize something that I think I first saw when I was an usher on Broadway watching actors hold the stage. When someone comes downstairs, either for a soliloquy or to just have a kind of small scene, right, down by the footlights or whatever it is, something where, or if you have to really stand deep back in the stage and hold everyone else while you give a full speech. It's right. Not a monologue or a soliloquy, but like an actual, you're addressing the troops in Henry V or something. You in MTAC showed me how to hold that room. Now, for everyone at home who doesn't know and hasn't been in MTAC, there's rug on the walls. This is a very weird room. It's like a sex room from the 70s. It's a very strange kind of
screening room part, it's like a Robert Evans
romper room.
where they would probably screen like old movies back in the years. It had a little bit of, but it was supposed to be this, classified room where the world of NCIS would watch, the possible threats going on around the world. So
you did this thing, and I just remember watching you. You stood in the middle of that room. There's a giant screen in front of you, and you're interacting, and we would do live feeds. A lot of times now people act to green screen, and they can't even see what they're doing.
Right.
But we would do live feeds, and Larry Patoker would make sure that everyone could see everybody doing everything. And that was really handy because you were acting with some actor who was out in the alley between the stages, set up in some fake Afghanistan with a video feed going right to the thing. But you were acting with a real actor, and you're doing the scene. But I marveled at your ability to stand there. First of all, do you know what I'm talking about? And second of all, if you do know what I'm talking about, how the hell do you do that?
Well, I think I do know what you're talking about. And it's, it's kind of what Cody and I were alluding to. I think it comes from that's where you realize that whatever we learned from the theater, wherever that training that we learned from the stage, because you want to have the same impact on that person that's sitting in row DD, seat 49 at the very back of the theater. You want that person to have the same experience as somebody who's sitting in row B in the second row. So you're playing the scene, and you're delivering whatever it is you're delivering with your entire being, not just with your eyes, not just with your whatever. And it's like, if you can embody what it is you're doing, I can sit in the back row of the theater and still be impacted by it. So I think there's that's my sort of definition of, when you're center stage, you got to play the entire house. The people in the balcony need to be, you want to hit the people in the back row the same way you hit the people in row B. So I guess that's probably where that comes from. Am I making any sense with that, Cody?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it's so amazing. I think you're so good. Do you know, I just was playing golf with Dietzen over the weekend down at Pinehurst.
Yeah.
And we were talking about the similarities between acting and golf.
I want to hear about this.
Well, because you can get in your head and you can get in your own way and you can lose your way. But when you're in flow and you relax and just let it happen, if you know what you know, it's going to go. But if you start second guessing your choice, or I should have done that, or, I mean, you know what I'm talking about, like, especially with on a drive or putting, you can yip the hell out of that putt.
You can think your way out of a good game. You can, it's so much the difference between a guy who finishes first in a golf tournament and the guy who finishes dead last. They're both great. They're both great golfers. They're both professionals. One of them just doesn't get in his own way. And I think it's the same thing with actors. And for me, I feel like my biggest attribute at this stage, as far as directing, I don't get in the way of my thing is for all the actors know, if I'm directing the episode, the only thing I'm going to give to you is the given circumstances, the here and now, the stuff that I think, the information that you need. When directors start running up after every take and start, they don't understand. Sometimes, if you've hired an actor to play a character, there's a certain level of trust you've already said. Why am I going to tinker with your performance? It's like, I hired you because I thought you were the right person for the job. I thought you were the right person to play this character. And sometimes, especially in the world of television, where you've got writers, I was told that there were early days on NCIS where the writers weren't even allowed on the set. Now the writers are like, it's like having another director. It's like somebody, somebody's tapping you on the shoulder and saying, could the actor do X, Y, and Z? I said, maybe they could. Let's see if they do. So I mean, there's got to be.
Wow, that would be like such a different way of working today. I don't know. I mean, we came from the old school NCIS, right, which is the writers weren't there, and we had, in many ways, thank God, the liberty, the freedom to be able to sort of run with our characters and find them, and that's such a luxury. But if you have a lot of cooks in the kitchen, it's very hard, and you feel like you start wearing this very tight jacket where you can't quite move, and it becomes detrimental, I think, for actors, because they begin, you start getting a little stiff, And
what I started, I've tried to find creative ways to deal with that. I take every time I direct an episode now, the writer of the episode I take to dinner before we start filming. And I talk to them in, just very simple terms. And I said, sometimes I know you don't know sometimes when you lose an actor, or when an actor he's being inundated with notes and fixes, and he may be on the outside saying, yeah, sure. But on the inside, he's doing this. He said, yeah, sure, I can do, it's like, now you don't respect what I'm bringing to the table.
Or this, which is worse. I mean, if you got this, that would be great. But if you got this.
But I'm saying sometimes the directors, the writers and the directors don't know when they're getting this, because the actor goes, oh, sure, I can do it that way, or I can do it that way.
And by the way, for people that are not watching, this means middle finger, and then the other means just scary face. So you could get fear, you could get like anger, like F you kind of a thing.
And I've seen very talented actors who've been cast in guest starring roles on our show sort of, wither and wither on the vine because they bring something to the table because they did a great audition and everybody's telling them how wonderful they are. And then as soon as we get 2 takes in, all of a sudden people are like tinkering with, maybe this, maybe a little less of that. And so for me as a director, my biggest thing is I understand that every actor has a process and every actor has a different process. And some actors, all you need to do is like, and yeah. Let's one more time. Do it. They don't need an earful of stuff. Some actors they love talking about from moment to moment. Then there are other actors who are just like, let me go again. I was like, yeah. Or you keep, I know what you're going for. Keep going. And I think what they appreciate the most is I respect you enough as an actor to stay the hell out of your way until you say to me, hey, Rock, I'm stuck here. What are we going to do? If not, my job now is basically to do damage control from all the other cooks in the kitchen who all want to, kind of tinker with things. So my remedy for that, guys, has been now lately is during the rehearsal process, I'll bring the writers in and we'll talk about the scene and I'll ask the writers, hey, is there anything I'm missing tonally about what we're doing here? Because I say to them all the time, I said, nobody says anything during the rehearsal process. As an actor, I'm thinking what I'm doing is working. So now when I'm in hair, makeup, and wardrobe, I'm solidifying the choices that I've made based on the rehearsal that we've done. So if not a word was said about how a scene should be played or the tone of it or whatever, the actor says to himself, well, then it's up to me. Nobody has said anything prior to this. So imagine my surprise when we get to 2 takes in, all of a sudden there's this flood of notes from Video Village saying, do this, do that. So I've decided I'm trying to put a stop to that. I've said, because that's what derails actors, because actors have been working on it and they've tried to develop a process. And sometimes
the DGA might have something to say about it as well.
Well, sure. That's one really valid point, but
No, I wanted to ask Rocky before we end this thing about Gene Hackman. He's one of those actors that I was watching something the other day and he was like, they said, how many takes do you like? And he said, I'll take 3. And they're like, oh, so you don't feel like you need to do it? Like you're learning more and more. And he's like, no. And you always struck me like a kind of Gene Hackman style actor. What do you think about Gene Hackman?
It's very funny that you should ask me that question. I have a saying. When I was a young actor in conservatory and a training program, I wanted to be Marlon Brando. When I became a professional actor, I wanted to be Gene Hackman. That literally, as I grew older and evolved and understood kind of what the impact of how much of an everyman that he was, and that his sort of ability to just sort of be there and be present. And it was like, as I got older and understood what it is about this craft and everything, it was like, no, that's the guy you want to be. That's the career I want to have. And I was lucky enough to work on Crimson Tide with him. And it was sort of like, literally by then I was like, yeah.
Confirmed. You're like confirmed. Check.
Yeah. Yeah. And he could literally make, sometimes the most subtle adjustment that would change the feel of the scene entirely. And you always felt like he was present and in the scene. And it made you work harder because you're going to get smoked if you're not dialed in. He's one of those guys that's just going to run circles around you. And you may not feel it when you're shooting the scene, but when you watch the final your dailies, you're like, he's kicking my ass. It's like, because it's not, you know, he doesn't chew the scenery. He's just there. He's just so immersed in what it is that he's doing. And he's so confident in what he's doing. So that sort of, that became my roadmap. I was like, okay, scrap the Marlon Brando thing. That's Gene Hackman. That's the road I want to go.
Well, yeah. I think you are Marlon Brando and Gene Hackman. How about that? I'm going to make you a sandwich. You're a double stuff.
Well, you know, Gene's right here, actually sitting across from me here, making coffee. So I'm gonna after this podcast, I'm gonna chop it up with him about that. You know, he's in his 90s now. He's like sort of living in somewhere in New Mexico or forget where, but there was a picture recently of him, and I always had this image. He was kind of this bigger than life figure, and it's like I can't imagine, you know, 94-year-old Gene Hackman just sort of.
You know what he does on the weekends? He arm wrestles Robert Duvall. They just hang out and arm wrestle. Well, Rocky Carroll,
this has been
such
just
a beautiful man.
Why, thank you. You know, I love you both madly.
I have such huge, happy memories of being on set with you. I always felt safe with you as an actor. I always felt like I was learning from you every single time I worked with you. So,
well, thank you,
Rocky Carroll.
Thank you, guys.
Rocky.
I love you. And anytime you need me, just whistle, because I'll be there.
Well, you never know.
Never been to Budapest?
Never been to Budapest?
I've never had a man ask me that. No. All right. Best of luck. Break a leg, you guys. I'm excited for your new venture. Can't wait to see it. And I'm going to try to finagle my way to see if I can do a cameo somewhere in Hungary.
Oh, that'd be fun.
It would be more than fun. Yes. As long as you don't mind traveling first class round trip to Europe, it'll be fine.
Let me think about it. Not at all. Yeah. All right, guys.
Fast.
All right. Bye.
Right. Bye, Rock.
Hey, great job, Cody. I thought that was so much fun.
Oh, I thought it was really fun. And he's just so easy. You know what I was going to say about that? It's funny when he was talking about the idea of flowing and sort of finding yourself in a very kind of flow. You were talking about golf and acting and all of that. All I kept on thinking was, well, it's so much easier to flow when you find yourself at ease, and the people that are working around you and making all of that possible, especially your acting peers, your partners in crime, when that becomes the thing that's around you, that sustains you when you're going through things, whether it's whatever it is, and we all have personal episodes, but the idea of flowing and finding that ease really gets enhanced when you're around the right people. And I have to say this, because I've talked about this before with friends, and they're like, hey, I hear you're going back and you're doing the show with Michael. And I say, yes, I'm doing the show with Michael. And they're like, oh, how do you feel about revisiting this? And I said, oh, I think it's going to be so much fun. And we get a chance to really, how many people in the world really get a chance to revisit old characters that they worked on, that they really care for?
It's like going back to another, going back to high school, or living in an old apartment that you used to live in, or it's weird. Yeah.
It is weird, but also, and I remember saying one thing, which I really truly mean. I said, look, I may have good days, I may have bad days, I may have, but I said one thing, I said, but I have Michael. And they were like, yeah, but you worked with him for like 8 years. And I said, yes, but we've grown up and we're older, and we have a different appreciation of life and the world and the work itself. And I said, I have Michael, and that to me is my greatest asset. But in a way, I do feel that, like, if by any chance I feel like, if I'm having a delicate day, or if I'm feeling overwhelmed about something or whatever, I could just say, like, I don't mean to say, I'm just going to put it on Michael. No, but I do feel that I could come up to you and say, like, hey, man, I'm having one of those days. And when before maybe I wouldn't talk about it, because maybe you would just kind of, hey, put on the face and just pretend like nothing's happening and just soldier on. Like, now I feel like I could approach that differently, and I could just say, like, hey, I'm having this, and just allow it to kind of be.
And
I don't know if you feel the same, but that's how I feel.
I feel exactly very similar, and have thought about it. We're I think one of the great lessons of getting a little older is that you understand, I have no idea what's going to happen.
No, and nothing's a guarantee. We know that too. You know what I mean?
But I know that all the people, these magical people we're meeting, all these wonderful, creative people that all seem in, it does bring me back to the NCIS mothership, to that sense of we're building something alchemical, something greater than the sum of its parts, something a little mysterious, something that we don't know. So
that's exactly how I feel. I don't know what it's going to be, but I'm really excited about it because the people that are surrounding it now, much like when we were reminiscing about like, well, how do you find that flow and the ease of being just around people that allow you to do that? It's like we have this opportunity to flow in a different way because we're going to be surrounded with a lot of different creative people, and we're gonna see what that is. But that kind of new incantation can be exciting and thrilling. It's a mystery. It's a mystery.
Can I tell you one thing that I was thinking about the other day that I really don't miss and I don't like about certain experiences I've had on sets? And it's this one. When do you guys think we're going to be done with this? Because I've got somewhere else to be.
Yeah.
I have to say, and I remember somebody, maybe it was even William Webb saying, Billy Squiggly Webb. I think I might have said that season 1, and he was like, why do actors always want to go somewhere else? Where do you like, why are you always looking at your watch and saying, I want to go home, or I want to go to this, or I have to be out by this time, or I have a heart, I think about that now and I'm like, yeah, I want to be fully inside the moment of what we're creating and not looking at a watch, not wearing a watch right now, part of my therapy.
Hi, you. Never did.
Because I want to be here, I want to be here and I want to be with you. I want to tell this story. But I want to experience life. It's not just about, we're going to have such a fucking adventure. It's going to be crazy. We got some fan questions. Carrie in DC says, was the ambulance explosion in this episode real, and were all explosions on the show handled the same way? And my answer, which I actually gave earlier in the interview, is the answer to that question is absolutely real. Larry Fuentes loved blowing things up.
Yeah. I remember at one point there was an explosion and I had something like stuck on my leg. There was something that blew up.
That lawsuit is still pending.
No, come on now. Nothing. I mean, it was obviously unintentional. It was a tiny little fragment of something that was stuck on my leg for a long time. But yes, they were real. They were very real.
I was just down in North Carolina, and this fan question comes from Kristen in North Carolina. Are there any downsides to being on the same show for a very long time?
Oh, I think that, at times you may feel like, of course, you've been there forever and ever, and you're like, oh my God, it's like being, it's like being with your family forever and ever and ever. And at times you're like, I need a break. But just like you get those breaks, you still love those people. And, and with time, you do get the incredible appreciation for it, which I think it's the greatest part about having that perspective, the gratitude.
Yeah, it's a good attitude. The last fan question.
Do you want to give me your truth on that?
In New York, no, I'm not going to share it.
Not you. I plead the fifth. Bye, you.
Yeah, I'm taking up.
Bye, you.
Wilson from New York wants to know, what do you eat on set? And this I will answer. Because
I think you're the one that needs to answer that. By the way, you just did a gun face. You didn't even know it.
So when it was table read day, I don't know if you remember this, but I would fill a cup with M&Ms.
I don't remember this at all.
Yeah, I would fill
but
a
you
cup
did.
with
Wait a minute.
Yeah. I would eat the M&Ms, but I would drink chocolate. I would drink the M&Ms.
Yeah,
because I saw the table read. I was very competitive about the table read.
It was your madness.
I came in white hot to those things. It drove Harmon absolutely bananas. I'm sure. I never talked to him about it, but it's easy to tell. I drove him bananas, and I probably drove every writer bananas because I didn't say the thing that they wrote, and I probably drove the other actors bananas because I didn't give anybody their feeds. But I was loaded on about 400 peanut butter M&Ms.
Which, by the way, are my favorite.
And I would also go to the Crafty Truck. Oh, remember the Crafty Truck? And I would make myself some big sandwiches. And I would have like turkey and tomato and avocado and a little lemon, salt and pepper with maybe a little olive oil. Those are real good.
Those are real good. I remember having my avocado tomato sandwiches. Those were my favorite. And
I would not eat the catfish off the truck. That was the one thing I wouldn't do. Cote DePablo, Gibbs rule of the day, rule number 28. And I think this one becomes more important the older you get. Certainly it's important when you're young, but you just won't take advice when you're young. But when you're older, do you know what rule number 28 is?
Nope.
When you need help, ask.
Ooh, I think what you said is very true. And I think some people are still learning that the hard way. We could do an entire episode about this rule, by the way. I think we could call it, episode named rule number 28. That's what we should do, because then we can go on some sort of tangent about it, because I do feel like the world today, needs it.
Needs a little help, but it just has to ask. It just has
But people need to acknowledge that they need the help, right?
You need to acknowledge.
Because there's a little bit of that, sorry, I'm just going to add to this because it's just a fascinating topic, but because there is a lot of what I want you to think of me as opposed to what the truth is of me. And I think that is the world we're living in today, perception versus reality. And I do think that is another episode. Bye, you.
Well, we have had another great off-duty podcast where we've, I think, solved all the problems of the world. Cody, where can I watch NCIS?
You can watch NCIS on Paramount Plus and CBS.
Next week on Off Duty, NCIS is called in after a group of teenagers discover the half-eaten body of a Navy petty officer in a park, but things take a turn. When Ducky reveals that the victim died after being stabbed and that he was already dead. The case soon descends into a nightmare when further investigation reveals numerous deaths in the park, which has Gibbs fearing the worst. A serial killer is on the loose in the park. Oh, shucks. Serial killers, my one weakness. It's season 3, episode 17, Ravenous. And remember what you have to do in Ravenous? Crazy stuff in Ravenous.
Okay, we'll discuss it.
Your fight scene in Ravenous with the serial killer
that bridge
guy.
When we get there.
Do you sleep with the serial killer?
Oh, come on.
Oh, I don't know. Well, let's watch it. Foof.